Daniel Whitmore's key slid into the lock with a soft click. He wasn't supposed to be home this early. Work at the law firm usually kept him until long after sunset. But the case had been postponed, and for once, he was walking into his quiet suburban home in broad daylight. The scent of lavender and freshly baked cookies drifted from the kitchen, wrapping him in a warmth that felt strangely unfamiliar. He loosened his tie, ready to hear the usual chaos that his 3-year-old twins, Lily and Noah, filled the house with. But instead, silence greeted him. He frowned, too quiet. Then he heard it, a soft humming. A voice. Not his wife's, not his mother's. No, it was younger, gentler, melodic. The nanny. He rounded the corner toward the living room and froze. Right there, on the plush cream-colored carpet, sat 22-year-old Marissa, the nanny he'd hired reluctantly 6 months ago, when his wife's illness worsened. She was on the floor, her hair pulled into a messy bun, her knees tucked beneath her, and both twins curled against her like kittens. But it wasn't the sight of them snuggling that stopped him in his tracks. It was what she was doing. Marissa had a small guitar propped against her lap, strumming softly, singing in a language Daniel didn't recognize. The twins, usually bouncing with endless energy, sat utterly entranced, their tiny faces tilted toward her, eyes wide with wonder. Noah's thumb rested half, forgotten near his mouth. Lily's curls spilled across Marissa's arm as she leaned in closer, listening. Daniel's throat tightened. He hadn't seen his children look that peaceful in months. Not since their mother's chemotherapy had started stealing her away bit by bit. For a long moment, he just stood there, an outsider in his own home, watching the scene unfold like a painting. Marissa noticed him first. Her fingers paused on the strings, and her head jerked up. Her cheeks flushed. "Oh, Mr. Whitmore! You're home early." The twins spun around and squealed. "Daddy?" They scrambled toward him, wrapping around his legs. He forced a smile, bending to hug them. "Hey, munchkins. What's going on here?" "Miss Rissa sings magic songs," Lily exclaimed. "They make Mommy feel better," Noah added solemnly. Daniel blinked. "Mommy?" Marissa bit her lip. "It's something I've been doing with them. When your wife feels too tired to get out of bed, I play for the kids." Sometimes she listens from her room. Something tugged hard at Daniel's chest. For weeks, he had been drowning in work, responsibilities, bills, and the gnawing fear of losing his wife. He hadn't noticed, hadn't really seen, the tiny ways Marissa had been filling the void. That night, after tucking the twins in, Daniel lingered outside his wife's room. The door was cracked open. Inside, he saw Marissa sitting at the bedside, guitar in hand, softly singing the same lullaby. His wife, pale and fragile against the pillows, had tears streaming down her cheeks. But she was smiling. Daniel pressed a hand against the wall to steady himself. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel suffocating. The next morning, he confronted Marissa in the kitchen. "Why didn't you tell me you played?" he asked, pouring coffee he barely tasted. She shrugged. "It wasn't important. I didn't come here to perform. I came to help with the kids." "But you've been doing so much more than that." Her eyes flickered with something. Hesitation, maybe fear. I know what it's like to grow up with a sick parent. My mom battled cancer when I was a kid. Music was the only thing that kept me from feeling lost. I thought maybe it could help them too." Daniel stared at her, stunned. He had judged her so quickly when she first arrived. Too young, too inexperienced, just another babysitter who would probably quit when things got hard. But she had stayed. She had given. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel began noticing little things. When Lily threw tantrums, Marissa would scoop her up, whispering into her ear until her cries softened. When Noah's nightmares kept him awake, she would sit by his bed, guitar on her lap, strumming until his breathing steadied. Even his wife, once closed off and irritable from the pain, seemed calmer when Marissa was around. There were days Daniel would come home to find them laughing together over tea, his wife wearing a headscarf but smiling with her eyes. It humbled him. He had been so focused on being the provider, the strong one, that he hadn't realized how desperately they all needed something softer, something that didn't come from money or medicine. One rainy evening, everything came to a head. Daniel had just returned from work, exhausted, when he heard crying upstairs. Not the twins, his wife. He raced up, heart pounding, and found her curled on the bed, sobbing into her hands. The twins hovered near the doorway, frightened. Before Daniel could move, Marissa stepped in. She sat beside his wife, placed the guitar gently across her lap, and guided her trembling hands over the strings. "Play with me," Marissa whispered. "Just one note. You don't have to be strong. Just let it out." At first, his wife resisted, shaking her head, but then Marissa strummed the first chord, and something broke loose. His wife's fingers pressed clumsily against the strings, a weak sound filling the room. The twins crept closer, crawling onto the bed. The four of them, Marissa, his wife Lily, and Noah, began to sing softly together. Off-key, broken, but together. Daniel stood in the doorway, tears burning his eyes, realizing he was witnessing something medicine couldn't give them hope. Weeks later, when his wife's treatment reached its lowest point, the family gathered in the living room. Marissa had planned something special, a small concert, as the twins called it. Neighbors came, friends too. Candles glowed, blankets were spread across the floor, and Marissa led everyone in song. His wife, frail but smiling, leaned against Daniel's shoulder as their children danced barefoot in the middle of the room. And for that night, there was no sickness, no fear, only music, love, and the fragile beauty of a family holding on. Daniel thought back to the moment he had first walked in, frozen at the sight of Marissa singing with his twins. Back then, he had seen just a nanny doing something unexpected. Now, he understood. She wasn't just a nanny. She was the thread that had kept his family from unraveling. And he would never forget it.